Welcome back. The one thing we could all agree on is we want our children to be safe at school. The question is the best way to do that. Sarasota Sheriff Tom Knight has a plan he has been thinking about since 20 children were gunned down at Sandy Hook. He officially proposed it after 14 teenagers were killed last month at a high school in Parkland. The sheriff wants to train retired law enforcement officers and veterans to work in the schools. They would carry concealed weapons and be employed by the school district. And joining us for more is Sarasota County Sheriff Tom Knight and veteran Bill Strabinsky, a retired Marine and co-founder of SRQ Vets. And gentlemen, thank you both for joining us. And Sheriff, basically, how does this work?
It's pretty simple. The demographics we have here, 418,000 residents. We have a lot of retirees. We have a lot of retired vets. The initial impact would be to pilot a program with retired law enforcement officers who retired after 10 years in good standing, who want to come back and serve and help. And I get it all the time. We shoot over 100 of those folks every year so they can carry their concealed weapons with them. They're here now doing it in the state of Florida, and they have this commitment to serve like the veterans do. And so my vision was to put together a program that is sound, is to utilize these individuals on the campuses in a capacity that what they would do in their normal capacity. If they see a situation or to confront a situation, that's what they instinctively do, like veterans do, and they have the temperament and the mindset to do it. But most importantly, they have the mindset that they want to serve. And they're tired of the mass shootings going on throughout our nation, and they want to do something to help. So how do we use them to help?
Everybody is tired of these mass shootings. Yeah. They're horrifying, but let's divide this into a couple different sections in terms of retired law enforcement people.
Right.
You know, some of the questions that have come up, you know, at Parkland, you had a current deputy who was there, and we don't know all the facts, but apparently he did not do the right thing. So just having an armed deputy or retired deputy is not necessarily going to be an effective way to stop a shooting.
You're exactly right, and you can never count on human behavior, what they're going to do in a sign of crisis. But I know my 31 years I've confronted danger, and I was in Miami during the riots, and I'm sure this young man has confronted danger as a veteran. And I think fully that veterans and law enforcement officers who are retired maybe not all act the same way, but they have the temperament to most times confront. And so we'll find out what happened down there eventually. One thing we do know happened down there was a green and white car on that campus, and it didn't stop a shooter from coming on the campus. So what can we do differently? What do we know? And what are some of the things we can change and maybe do differently? It isn't perfect, nor is my plan perfect, but what is an opportunity to take advantage of?
And Bill, you and I have talked, and I know that as a vet, a combat-tested vet, you think that this may be a good idea and that some of your fellow vets may be up to the task, but you also have some questions about it.
I mean, I do believe, just as the sheriff was saying, that veterans and law enforcement are up to task to do it. They were trained to do this. I know at 18 years old, joining the Marine Corps Infantry, we were trained to handle these stressful situations. I think that there is a fair comparison to be made that being a combat infantry Marine is an extreme side of life, and then coming back into the civilian world, being somebody with an opportunity to stop violence like this at a school, it's going to ask that person to take a step back before shooting first and asking questions later. So I think the issue is going to be is finding the appropriate people to do it, getting the appropriate training, and making sure that they're of right sound in mind. It shouldn't just be a blanket or a black and white, we're going to stick a vet or a law enforcement person there. We have to find the right person.
We're going to get more into that, but essentially your point there is when you are a Marine or any other combat soldier, you are trained first to shoot and ask questions later, and that is not necessarily the tactic you want to take in the school setting.
Well, you can't. You have to, like, okay, so when you go into the military, it's an extreme lifestyle, and you have to understand that when you transition back, you have to taper some of that. There has to be more thought to your actions instead of just a reaction and then figure out what happened afterwards.
Okay, we are just getting warmed up, and we'll have much more on Sheriff Knight's school security plan right after we check the first alert weather, so stay with us. Welcome back. We're talking about Sheriff Knight's Marshall Plan for local schools, and joining us for more is Sarasota County Sheriff Tom Knight and veteran Bill Strabinsky, a former Marine and co-founder of SRQ Vets. I'm going to ask you both some tough questions that occurred to us when we were thinking about putting veterans into the schools in order to help keep our kids safe, which we all want to do. One of which would be, would you try to screen out vets who have been diagnosed with PTSD? It would seem like an obvious question, Sheriff.
Yeah, you know, I get asked that a lot, and certainly under 943 and under the plan, everybody has to be vetted. Anybody comes to work for me. We have a lot of vets that work for me that were in the military. Being a cop is different being in the military. It's a totally different job description, but they're great warriors, they're great leaders, and they want to serve. And I get a little upset sometimes about everybody thinks a retired cop or a vet has PTSD when they don't. Is that these are individuals who will be screened, they'll have a background check done on them under 943 statutes, they will take a psychological, they will be required to go through certain screening processes if the school district decides to do it. And the retired cops and veterans who served us not all have PTSD, but certainly that is a concern that people want to ask about, especially when guns are such a hot topic right now with mental health. And so do all of our retired cops and do all of our vets have PTSD and mental health issues? No. But will they be screened appropriately to go on a campus with a concealed weapon? Absolutely, they will.
Bill, I'm going to ask you the same question. Obviously, not all vets have PTSD, although we have a lot of vets who have seen a lot of action over the last decade and a half. Does the sheriff's response satisfy your questions on that?
I mean, I'm in agreement in regards to you have to vet, you have to train. I think that's the appropriate measure that you take, because again, in regards to a veteran, the transition going into the civilian world, you have to reprogram, or at least try to find a way. I'll say from a personal perspective and from the knowledge of working with veterans, we have a strong passion to continue to serve. We have a strong passion to take whatever PTSD or memory that has plagued our minds to turn that into a motivation to continue to serve. So some of us who are haunted by that and get stuck and fall into that black hole may stay there, but some of us, myself and the veterans that I work with included, we redirect that motivation and we serve. And I can tell you that majority of the veterans that you'll find, they'll be willing to serve. They'll be willing to take on the sheriff's plan to be vetted, to be trained, just for the purpose of serving.
Here's another question. Not all men and women who are in the military serve in combat. So are you only interested in members of the military who were in combat and trained in that way, or other members of the military who never had that basic experience?
I don't think they need to be in combat to serve our communities, and we have a lot of veterans out there who were trained in the military, who were trained with weapons and to shoot and to serve, and we can train anybody under my plan to be a retired cop. And the pilot program, retired police officers, they're going to get 40 hours of instruction of firearms, 12 hours of active shooter assailant instruction, 16 hours of situational awareness, 8 hours of instruction of first aid, 8 hours of legal and high liability, which is a huge issue being on these campuses, and then the orientation be done by criminal justice certified instructors here in the state of Florida. Could we build on that with veterans? Just like we do with our veterans who serve in the sheriff's office now, wear the uniform. You'll see many of our veterans now wearing the insignia of the service that they provided to their country in the military on their uniform now. So can we train them? Yes. Can we find the people who have the mentality of a veteran and a cop? They're not all out there. Right. So we want the personality.
And that's true. And also that you're almost getting a step up, because you have these law enforcement, these veterans, they're trained in weapon safety, they're trained in muzzle awareness, they're trained in trigger control. Like this is already a foundation, so to be able to build off of a good foundation like that, I think is a positive.
Yeah.
Here's another question. Would you take into consideration their discharge, honorable discharge, general discharge? Things happen. And where does that play into?
Not even veterans and cops, because cops have disciplinary records. And so, I think my plan talks about have to work at least 10 years and leave in good standing. So certainly a background check will be important. That's something we do with any employee who comes inside the sheriff's office. So if I'm going to be signing off on it as sheriff, you better believe we're going to have the right preference in there that I'm going to work with the school district on if they choose to do this program, and certainly the discharge paperwork as a veteran, and that'll be discovered during a background check.
There are exceptions, but you have to. That's your applicant. You have to look at the whole picture of the applicant. But I think that's fair, totally.
Let me ask you about something that I often hear from law enforcement officers when the question of whether it's former military or law enforcement or army teachers comes into effect, that they're concerned that when police get a report of an active shooter and they rush to a scene, they're looking for an active shooter. Right. When you add the element or the possibility of more people with firearms, and so in the the fog of confusion in situations like that, doesn't it make a situation potentially more dangerous?
Yes. And I would say this, is that those are all concerns that we have that we'll train for when we get on a campus. If a deputy arrives on a campus, an active shooter, identifying an off-duty law enforcement officer, a retired law enforcement officer, that'd be part of the training and how they communicate when they come on the campus. A lot of things we know when we arrive at campuses, we arrive at any call for services in our MDTs, our in-car cameras, our in-car terminals in our cars, is that'll be displayed when the deputies arrive, and that there is a certain person there, and they'll be able to identify them. But, you know, there's a risk in anything we do. And unfortunately is that, you know, if I am concerned about litigation, about every decision I make, we won't be able to do anything, we'll be paralyzed. This is certainly just a program for a stopgap right now to protect the children until something bigger is done. And I don't know what that final answer is, but I can tell you one thing is that my responsibility is to this community to try to do something different, because what's being done has not worked.
Bill?
In regards to the first question, yeah, naturally it's a horrible situation to be in, but unfortunately to protect, you have to combat it with a responsible person who knows how to put rounds down range and on target. But that's why you train them, and you have to get, and that becomes a resource issue, and you have to get the resource issue. So you do some CQB training, some close quarters battle training, where you put these scenarios out there so that you can train that trigger control. I'm for it, I support it, and our children are our resource. They're our most valuable resource.
Right, but God forbid an incident happens and it turns out that a young person is injured by friendly fire, by the former officer or the military person there. You could imagine what will come out of that.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
I'm willing to risk my credibility
in
that.
I agree.
The training and the resources that we have, and what these folks have done and what my folks, retired cops, have done. I'm willing to put that risk to save some child's life, knowing that nothing is better, doing something's better than doing nothing at all. And right now, I don't know the school district's going to do anything. Nothing's changed.
Well, I have a couple of other questions, but where does that stand with the school district?
I would think that they don't want anything to do with it, because I haven't heard from them.
Because of what?
I haven't heard from them.
Okay.
They haven't said anything about it, so that's a no to me.
Well, then we have some questions to ask.
Yeah.
the school district, and I promise to do that. But in the time we have left, and I know that your proposal is focused on the schools, but it also occurs to me, what happens when these kids leave the schools and then go to the movies or the concert?
Walmart, Publix, sheriff's office, anywhere. I mean, this can happen anywhere. Unfortunately, we're seeing more and more in our communities at the movies in Colorado. It's unfortunate what's going on in our nation. Why it's driven, I don't know. I think, but the schools are where the most of the children are at, and that's where the passion is at, and the motivation is to protect them and to do something different.
Until something happens at the movie theater down the street.
And that, Alan, you're exactly right, and that's why I propose this. I don't think this is a perfect answer. I'm not saying that I'm the perfect person to come up with a perfect solution. What I'm saying is doing nothing is negligence. It's the definition of insanity. Doing something and trying to do something different to try to make an improvement is something that we always do at the sheriff's office.
Right. We have to take a quick break, but we'll be back for final thoughts in a moment. Stay with us. And our guest joining us right now for final thoughts. And Bill, when we left you, you said you are all for this program, but you do have some pretty significant questions about how it's enacted, if it is.
Yes, I think the big thing comes down to being able to choose the right person for the job and the appropriate training. And that's a big concern for me. I look to, as SRQ Vets, we are a local veteran group that support the local community and want to strengthen the local community. So this is a local issue. So I think that coming together and trying to figure that out is how we're going to solve it.
Okay, Sheriff, let me ask you about whether your proposal conflicts in any way with what we're hearing that's going to come out of Tallahassee. It's fluid. I know that we don't have the answers, but from what you hear in terms of arming with more police officers in every school or whatever, how would that work with your proposal, and do you have any problems with what's being talked about in Tallahassee?
Well, my proposal is something that probably won't make it this year because there's got to be statutory changes to allow it to happen. I haven't heard back from Senator Stubbe, who I made this proposal to, so I haven't heard anything back about the change of the laws that would allow the concealed carry. So we're probably at the point where the legislative body appears as though they want to put cops on every campus.
Right. Specifically that under current state law, correct me if I'm wrong, the only person that can have a concealed weapon on the school campus is a
law
police
enforcement,
officer.
yes.
Right.
Is law enforcement, yes.
But what's your problem in terms of they want to put an armed officer in every school?
Oh, I agree with being able to put an armed officer in every school, and it sounds really good in philosophy. The issue will always be is it takes us nearly 12, 13 months to get a police officer or deputy up and trained, $132,000 a deputy. For me, as a school district asked me today, they need 12. I don't have 12 deputies in the bullpen waiting to go to work. We're budgeted for what we're staffed for. So I think the big issue of the Florida sheriffs is the fact that the legislative body is going to put something out there that sounds good in philosophy, but is it reality that we have enough police officers to staff these campuses in a timely manner? And so like anything else, some other service level will drift while we restaff the campuses. So you can rest assured that if the legislative body says that we're going to staff the campuses, I'm certainly going to staff the campuses in collaboration with the school district, but some other service line will be missed. It'll take me a year to replace 12, 13 deputies.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Before we go, we want to share with you what some of you had to say about last night's show on the Journalist Protection Act. There are many jobs out there where risk is involved. Being a reporter is one of them. In 2017, 44 journalists were attacked. So far in 2018, 3 have been. In many cases, reporters are attacked and threatened just for doing their job. So we went to Facebook to hear your thoughts, and Tyler says they aren't special. They are regular citizens. Same rules for assault should apply. Matt says if there is a statistically significant elevated risk to the job, then they should have additional protections similar to those of police, medical professionals, and political figures. Todd says it is more likely they are being attacked for not doing their jobs and just carrying the government's water. Wow, okay. Well, if you'd like to join the conversation about tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/mysuncoast.com.abc7. And FYI, you can watch past discussions on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. And for the latest on local breaking news, don't forget to download the updated version of our app. If your current app doesn't work, it's expired, just go to the App Store and re-download it by searching for WWSB or My Suncoast. We want to thank both our guests for being here tonight. Sarasota County Sheriff Tom Knight and veteran Bill Stravinsky, a former Marine and co-founder of SRQ Vets.